Yeah, so I'm the Director of Education Programs at our National Geographic Society headquarters, which is in Washington, D.C. So I had kind of a long flight to get here, but I'm so happy to be here, so grateful I was invited and really excited to see what you all are doing. My work now focuses on professional learning opportunities for teachers and for students, ways that people can interact with the topics that we care about at National Geographic, which are wildlife and our changing planet and the human journey. But for many years, I worked specifically on citizen science at National Geographic, and that's really where my heart is, and I'm so excited to be part of what you all are doing with citizen science and science education in general. So before I tell you a little bit more about myself, I'll tell you about National Geographic. So you probably all have seen the National Geographic magazine. Maybe, have any of you watched the National Geographic channel on TV? Yeah. So, but in addition to those things, we also have a big education program where we create all kinds of resources and programs for people to learn more about the world around them. And our mission is to teach kids about the world around them, empowering them to succeed and to make it a better place. And when we do this, we work with something we call the explorer's mindset. Well, what's that? So when someone gets a grant from National Geographic, because we give out a lot of grants, and that's something you should all know about, you should all consider at some point in your career applying for grants. You're eligible once you're 18 for an early career grant. So we give out all these grants, and once someone gets a grant from us, they are considered a National Geographic explorer. So a few years ago, we started talking to our explorers and asking them, what is it that made them so curious and so successful in their career in pursuing all these amazing, challenging projects? And we heard from them about the particular attitudes and skills and kinds of knowledge they needed to come up with an explorer's mindset. And now we're building all of our education programs around this idea of helping people develop an explorer's mindset. So if this works, this little video will show you a little bit more about what is in an explorer's mindset.
You do this through
curiosity,
observation, communication,
storytelling makes you care about something,
collaboration,
responsibility,
Kids actually have more power than adults.
empowerment.
And problem solving.
National Geographic.
taking us
Further.
So I don't know why that got funky, but at least I wanted you to hear it anyway. You get a sense of what those things are that are parts of the explorer's mindset, like curiosity, responsibility, empowerment, and then the skills of observation, communication, collaboration, and problem solving. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today, is because I know you all are doing all of these things, practicing these attitudes and skills in your projects. Okay, so now just a little bit more about me. Does anybody know what this is? I'm not sure if I heard it, but it's a kind of primate. It's a slow loris. A slow loris is a kind of a primitive primate, and they live in Southeast Asia. And the reason I'm showing you a slow loris is that when I was your age, I participated in a research program at the Minnesota Zoo. The Minnesota Zoo had slow lorises, and they wanted to know more about their behavior, and they had high school students studying them in their habitat in the zoo, recording their behavior. And it was such an amazing project. I really loved learning about this creature and using the scientific method to understand more about its behavior. And so that captured my heart. Of course, like, who wouldn't want to be around these guys all the time? And so then I decided I wanted to study biology in college and keep studying animals. So I did. I went to college, studied biology, and right after college I had this amazing opportunity to work in Borneo studying orangutans. I hope you all can see the baby in there too, the baby hanging onto the bottom of that mother. Yeah. So there was this project out in Borneo, and we were studying orangutan behavior. My supervisor was a graduate student who was writing her PhD about orangutan behavior. And this project, I spent about a year there right after college, and I had some of the best experiences and some of the most challenging experiences of my career. So figured I'd tell you about one of the challenging experiences, because we will all face challenges. But when I first got there, I had heard that occasionally orangutans will chase each other and chase people. So I asked my supervisor, well, what do I do if an orangutan chases me? And she said, don't worry, I've been working here for 3 years and no orangutan has ever chased me. But if orangutan does chase you, don't run, because they're very fast and they will outrun you. So what you should do is just stop where you are and act really submissive so that you're not a threat, and maybe even pretend to eat some leaves. So, okay, fine. I was really scared though, because orangutans can be pretty scary. This is an orangutan actually from the site where I was working in Indonesian Borneo in Kalimantan Barat. And the males fight with each other a lot, so they do get really aggressive. So that's why I was a little bit worried about it. But the reason we weren't worrying, most days we didn't worry about this, is because orangutans usually live in trees. They spend their whole lives up in trees, and they happen to be very lazy. So they're really lazy because they don't actually get to eat that many calories a day. They're about the same size as people, but they eat a lot less than us, or they eat all day long, but they don't get as many calories as us because they're primarily vegetarian, just eating fruit that they find in the forest. So it takes a lot of fruit to fill up an orangutan. So they're really lazy. They just sit in the tops of the trees most of the time, and they don't do much, actually, except eat. But I happened to be there in a mast year. So a mast year is when many different kinds of trees fruit all at once. And it's really tied to the climate cycle. It usually happens during El Nino years. And in Borneo, an El Nino year is typically very dry, lots of droughts, even fires. And all the trees mast. The theory is that the trees, in case they're going to die, they just start to reproduce as much as possible. So the orangutans get to eat a lot more than usual during a mast year, which means they have a lot more energy and they start to do a lot more things, including that they come down out of the trees and start walking around on the ground. So, yep, sure enough, an orangutan chased me. This is the actual orangutan that chased me. And as you can see, he is on the ground in this picture. This is a picture from National Geographic. He's actually eating termites here, so that's one of the few things they eat that aren't vegetarian. This orangutan, the way we would study them is we would follow them around for the whole day. They live right on the equator, so they get up when the sun rises at 6 a.m. and they nest in the trees at 6 p.m. So we would follow them around from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and record their behavior every couple of minutes, and also record everything that they ate. So I was following this guy. His name is Jari Manis, and it means sweet finger, which is what they call the fourth finger. In Indonesian, you call your fourth finger that, and he had a broken fourth finger. So Jari Manis was just on the ground, and I was recording what he was doing, which was just sitting around and eating, and all of a sudden he turned around and chased me. He ran right at me. So I did remember that my supervisor had said, don't run, but what do you think I did? I ran. Of course, who's not going to run when that giant orangutan is coming at you? So I ran away. And yes, indeed, he was a lot faster than me, so he caught up to me right away. And this happened so many years ago, and now I feel like I'm reliving it. It was so scary. This giant orangutan running at me. And my brain finally remembered that my supervisor had said that I should sit down and be submissive and pretend to eat leaves. Sat down, started stuffing leaves in my face. In my mouth. And sure enough, Jari Manis ran right up next to me and sat down next to me and started eating leaves too. And then he was chewing them, and then he spit them out, because apparently I'd chosen some really disgusting leaves. So then he just wandered away. So this happened a couple more times, but it was true that he actually didn't have really an intention to hurt me. It turned out he just liked to threaten anyone who was kind of in his space. So I gradually learned that I should just eat leaves and then I would be fine. So that was one of the scariest things that ever happened to me, but it was all part of this wonderful experience I had. And the But another very, very important thing that happened to me in Indonesia, which is why I think about that experience whenever I'm thinking about science and science education, is that I gradually learned the Indonesian language, and then I was able to talk with the Indonesian research assistants that worked with us. And eventually, one of them asked me, why are you studying orangutans in Indonesia? Why don't you just study them in America? And I realized that they didn't know that there weren't orangutans, that there are not orangutans in America. This is a map of orangutan range, which is only in Borneo and Sumatra, and you can see it's very limited. Orangutans are endemic to that area, and they are highly endangered. But the folks who were living right next to them in this national park where we worked didn't know that. Like, nobody had bothered to share that information with them, or no one had thought to share the information with them. And that was a point in my life, in my early career, where I decided that I loved science, but I thought it was really important to share scientific knowledge with other people, and not just study things, but also to share the knowledge. And that's how I started to gradually get more and more involved in science education. So that was kind of the beginning of the career that I have now. Okay, fast forward many years to 2011, when I started working in the National Geographic Education Program, and I got to do all kinds of cool things. This is, we took teachers to the Arctic Circle, north of Norway in Svalbard, and this is doing a polar plunge in the Arctic Ocean. You're only allowed to stay in for 2 seconds. And we did get to see all kinds of amazing creatures there, like this polar bear. Lots of polar bears. It was pretty upsetting to see, however, because the sea ice is shrinking, and that's causing a lot of trouble for the polar bears. So I'm really grateful I did get to see them. So I got to do all these great things, but really my favorite thing that I ever did at National Geographic was working on citizen science. And one of my favorite programs that I worked on was a program called BioBlitz. Has anyone here done a BioBlitz? Have you heard that word before? Yeah, a few people have. That's what I thought. Some people from your school have, right? So BioBlitz is right when you go out and you count the number of species you can find. It's like a biodiversity survey. I know many of you here have used iNaturalist, which is what we use too. So we've done BioBlitzes now in many different national parks around the United States. In 2016, we did 269 BioBlitzes across the United States. And I love BioBlitzes because it's a chance both to contribute real data, meaningful data that helps people understand natural resources, but also to learn. But I won't say any more about that. I'm going to let Imani tell you her story, hopefully.
I really love getting dirty now. It's like a beautiful thing that just happened. My name is Imani. I'm 7 years old. I'm going to tell you about my experience about BioBlitz. I traveled to New Orleans, Louisiana for BioBlitz 2013. It seems like it took forever. We went with the park ranger Stacy in the bayou at Jean Lafitte National Park to do an inventory. An inventory is when you go out with a scientist or a park ranger to discover animals you've never seen before. I saw a snake, a turtle, and a mink. I let the mink crawl my head to my arm. When the mink landed my arm, it tickled. Just so ticklish, that's all I can say. I fell in the mud too. It was really gross. There's spiders and everything. Well, I first didn't like it, and then I loved it a lot.
It's very liberating going to the mud.
My foot is stuck! Just took a stick from the floor and kept on walking with it.
Imani was very fearful of anything that flew or crawled.
But now I'm not scared anymore. I discovered a bird I adopted named Holly. I now appreciate the living things and beauty of them. I met a lot of cool people from National Geographic and the National Park Service. I felt like an explorer, and I felt like I could touch anything. BioBlitz helps us to learn animals, to help animals around the world. I love BioBlitz. Now I told you about my BioBlitz. What's yours?
So as you saw, that was a few years ago, and then we had Imani and her mom come back to our BioBlitz in 2016, and that was really fun to see because Imani now is studying the genetics of different species in high school, so she's continued to love science. And I am only going to show you one more thing before ending my talk, although I'll be around all day and so excited to talk to you all and hear about your projects. But I wanted to show you a project I've been working on recently. This is part of a program we call Geo-Inquiry, which is combining geography with the scientific inquiry process and civic action. So the idea behind it is kind of doing citizen science in the classroom, and then connecting citizen science to civic action. So like taking what you learn from your citizen science project and converting it into, or using it as a platform to start taking action to make things better, to make the world a better place. But as part of this project, we have been interviewing our explorers around the world to ask them to talk about different phases of scientific inquiry and how they use them in their projects. So this is a video that was just finished, you're the first audience to see it, about one of our explorers in Africa.
Everyone comes to a national park in Africa and they want to see lions. They are among the most incredible species I've ever worked with. My name is Blitz. I'm a National Geographic Explorer and Associate Director of Lion Conservation for Borneo National Park in Mozambique. When we began, nothing was known about how many lions we had. It was all about collecting data to really put this population on the map. This country endured 16 years of civil war, and that war was centered in Borneo. During that time, there was a lot of overhunting. So we lost about 95% of our large mammals in a very short time. After the war, recovery began, slowly. And by 2006, the Greg Carr Foundation and the government of Mozambique forged a long-term plan to restore this national park to the gem that it used to be before. Over the past decade, we've seen a remarkable recovery of wildlife populations, with the exception of lions. They didn't make a strong comeback, and our research was specifically to ask why. To be effective in conservation, you have to collect data which will guide you in the right direction. When we first got started, we knew we had to collect data on how many lions we had, how many females, how many males, and what they were eating, where they were ranging. So we collect data using a variety of techniques. One is we collect spatial data from the GPS satellite collars. So these collars, besides pinging with satellites, also have a radio signal that's pinging off them. Every lion with a collar has a unique number, so we can tune in on the dial on the radio and actually hear where they are. Secondly, we use camera traps to collect data on lions and other species across the park. We collected so much data that we launched Wildcam Borneo, which allows anybody with a Wi-Fi connection to log on and help us identify species. In conservation these days, you need to be able to react fast. We don't have time on our side. And thirdly, we are actually on the ground with our teams collecting data in the field. Through our data collection, we learned that snares are the biggest threat to lions. A snare is a piece of wire or a steel-jewel trap that are set by hunters in the park to catch buffalo or warthog, but incidentally, lions are in these very same places, so they become entrapped. And so we began to intervene. Patrols go out and sweep areas clean with devices that lions and other wildlife are getting trapped in. They can come back with 20, sometimes they come back with 200. they're actually collecting data on where these snares and traps will sit, because there are patterns closer to water, forest edges, closer to the boundary. Where before, snares were such a threat, today, thanks to the line patrols and data that we've collected, we've been able to reverse that trend. We're looking for a couple of very large line masses. One is very, very pregnant, and the other has cut. Over the past year, we've seen such high crop production. Wherever we look, all the lands we've been studying have crops. At this point, we feel like we're on a path to recovery. The time is now. If we don't act today, in 20 years, we could lose lives on this continent. That's why we care, and we believe we can do something to better the situation. Data collection will always be important in conservation. New threats will emerge. They won't be the same as threats we encountered 5 or 10 years ago. They may. But in the meantime, as we bring data in, we can act on that data. And that's the most important thing for us now.
So I really like this video and this whole project because it shows how important data collection is to conservation, to making a difference in the world. So I hope as you've been doing data collection in your projects, you realize just what a critical step that is in better understanding our world. So that's all from me for now, but I look forward to talking to you all throughout the day, and thank you so much.